Shabbat shalom, brothers and sisters. Your brother KhazaqYah of MalachiMinistries.org. And today we have a special treat for you. We're going to deal with the subject of the gospel. So we're going to go straight to the subject of the gospel. We're going to start off in Matthew chapter 4, right? So get your scriptures out, go to Matthew chapter 4, and we're going to start at verse 23. For those of you that this is your first time viewing us, we call the Messiah by the name he was known by when he walked the face of the earth. We don't call him by this modern name that his name was transliterated to. We call him by his rightful name that his mother and father named him when he walked the face of the earth. And that name is Yeshua. Okay? Having that understanding, let's continue. Yeshua went about all Galilee teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing all manner of sickness and all manner of disease among the people. So now the Messiah was going around preaching the gospel of the kingdom. Now, we have heard over and over again that the gospel is the life, the birth, the death, and resurrection of the Messiah. That's the gospel. No, it's not. That is inclusive of what the gospel is, but the Messiah himself preached the gospel. And if the Messiah preached the gospel, we need to understand what is the gospel if we're going to preach the gospel. Okay, so that's the purpose of this lesson. This lesson is to show you that the gospel is not just the death or life, death, and resurrection of the Messiah. It has more entailed to the gospel that is supposed to be preached to the world. The gospel is not even miracles. People going around performing miracles, that's the gospel. The gospel is a specific message that the Most High promised the nation of Israel that has to be and will be fulfilled according to the prophecies. Okay, now having that understanding, let's go over to Matthew 9:35. We're going to show you a few more instances where the Messiah himself preached the gospel. All right, Matthew 9:35. And Yeshua went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. So the Messiah went about, we see another occurrence where he went about preaching the gospel. And it came to pass, when Yeshua had made an end of commanding his 12 disciples, he departed thence to teach and to preach in their cities. Now when Yochanan had heard in the prison the works of the Messiah, he sent 2 of his disciples, verse 3, and said unto them, Art thou he that should come, or do we look for another? Yeshua answered, verse 4, and said unto them, Go in and show Yochanan again those things which you do hear and see. Okay, and the blind receive their sight, and the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised up, and the poor have the gospel preached to them. Here we see again the Messiah saying that the poor, we're going to deal with that. The poor had the gospel preached to them. Okay. Now we're going to show you in this lesson that what most people call themselves preaching the gospel, they are actually preaching the total opposite of what the gospel is. Okay. Now let's go over to Matthew 24, right? Matthew 24. We're going to see this in a minute, what the gospel is, and before we even get through the lesson. But let's go to Matthew 24, and let's start at verse. Now, just to give you a little brief history of this chapter, I'm not going to read the whole chapter, but the Messiah, they asked the Messiah what would be the signs of his second coming and all of that. He went through all of these things, talking about false messiahs, false prophets would rise up. Now, verse 14, he says, and this gospel, what he's telling them, this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world. See that? For a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. So the Messiah told him that this gospel is going to be preached to all nations, and then the end is going to come. So we still haven't identified what this gospel is that's going to be preached to all nations. Okay, and the end will come. All right, now let's go to Matthew chapter 26. Okay, and verse 13. All right, Matthew chapter 26 and verse 13. Okay, and it reads, verily I say unto you, whosoever, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached in the whole world, there shall also this that the woman have done be told for her a memorial of her. Now, what this woman did, brothers and sisters, you gotta see that. I'm gonna read it from the top so you can see what this woman did, because this is showing you what the gospel is, right? He've already basically told you the poor having the gospel preached to them, and we're gonna break down what who that poor is. Here we showing you what this woman did. The gospel was preached to her so much so that she realized that she had to do something, right? So if you look at it here, let's go up a little bit and let's read in verse 6. Started at verse 6, chapter 26, verse 6, right? And now when Yeshua was in Bethany, the house of Simon the leper, there came to him a woman having an alabaster box, a very precious ointment. So now this woman was rich. She had a very precious ointment, which meant that it was worth something. She wasn't a poor woman. And she poured it on his head as he sat and meat. Okay, this woman took this very precious ointment that was very expensive. Instead of her going into the marketplace, making a whole lot of money. Watch what they say in this story here, right? This is the gospel. Watch what they say here. It says, when the disciples saw it, the disciples, the followers of the Messiah, this is what the common people in the world do. They call this preaching the gospel, but this is the exact opposite. When the disciples saw it, they had indignation, saying, to what purpose is this waste? They saying, no, the Father, the Most High, gave you power to obtain wealth. So why is this woman wasting the power of the gospel? You see? But this woman understood what the gospel was, and so she began to apply the teaching that the Messiah taught to her, the understanding of what the gospel is, brothers and sisters. Okay, now, verse 9. For this ointment might have been sold for much and given to the poor, right? Now, they want to try to get religious with it. Okay, we can use all your money for the gospel's sake. Bring all your money so we can give to the poor, right? Okay, I don't know their intent, but we see that happen in today's time. People say, they show you all these poor, impoverished people in Africa and give money so we can feed the poor, right? Okay, that is not the purpose. Verse 10, and Yeshua understood it, and he said to them, why trouble you the woman? In other words, he's saying she understands the gospel. For she have wrought a good work upon me. For you have the poor always with you, is what the Messiah is saying. See, the gospel is not giving to the poor. That's not what he's saying. The gospel is this attitude that this woman had with regards to the Messiah. Okay, now, I think you might be getting the revelation by now, but let me continue. For in that she hath poured the ointment on my body, she did it for my burial. Verse 13, verily I say unto you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached, right, in the whole world, there shall also be this that the woman have done be told for a memorial of her. Why? Because this woman, she reacted to the gospel that the Messiah had taught the masses. And we're going to show it to you. You're going to be crystal clear. You'll be able to understand and see what the gospel is, brothers and sisters. Okay, now, what we have fallen for, the okey doke, the Mickey put in our drink, if you will, is not the gospel. Okay, now, let's continue. So there, Matthew chapter 26, verse 13. What I want to do now is I want to break down this word gospel, right? The word gospel is an English word that came from a Greek word, and the Greek word is euangelion or euangelion or euagilon, however you want to pronounce it, right? Okay, it is the Greek word. If you have your Strong's Concordance, go to your Strong's Concordance and you can read this with us. The number is 2098. It is defined as a good message, the gospel, and it says the same as 2097, good news. Right now, 2097 is euangelizo, which is from 2095 and 32. It is to announce good news, right? To evangelize, especially the gospel. Okay, so evangelizing the gospel. Right now, 2095 is EU, pronounced you, which means good, well. Okay, 32, which is agelos, it is from 71 and 34, which is to bring tidings, a messenger, an angel, by implication a pastor. So 71, ego in the Greek, to lead, to bring, to drive, to go, to pass, to induce. 34 is agelo, which means a drove, or also known as a herd, like a herd of sheep, a flock. So that word euangelizo means a person who is been given the power and authority to lead the flock with the good news. Okay, what is that good news? Okay, we're going to deal with that in a minute. Okay, now, having an understanding, let's go over to Luke chapter 4, if you will. All right, where we deal with this gospel. The Messiah set the stage. All right, now Luke chapter 4 let's start at verse 16. Luke chapter 4 verse 16. And he came to Nazareth. Who was the he? Yeshua the Messiah. Okay, when he had been brought up, and as his custom was. So the Messiah had a custom, his family had a custom. What their custom was. What was their custom? Obeying the Father. We're going to show you what it was. He went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day, not the first day of the week, the seventh day, the Sabbath day, and stood up for to read. And there was delivered unto him a book. So the Messiah stood up to read. He wasn't carrying a Bible like this, brothers and sisters. He went in the synagogue. The Pharisees and the scribes had the scrolls. They handed him the scroll, the book of Isaiah. He began to read, and this is what happened here. He delivered unto him the book of the prophet Yeshayahu, or Isaiah. And when he had opened the book, he found the place where it is written. Okay, now this is what he read. He read this. He didn't get up and just go into the spirit and say this is a fresh revelation or prophetic utterance. He read it. Watch what he says here. The Spirit of Yah. Now, I want to just kind of reiterate this. Everywhere you see Lord, it was a King James substitution that took to take the Father's name out. Let's put it back in. All right. The Spirit of Yah is upon me because he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. So whatever this gospel is, brothers and sisters, is to be preached to the poor. Okay, that's what the gospel is. Something that is to be preached or proclaimed to the poor. All right, let's continue. Preach to the poor. He have sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives. So the preach deliverance to the captives is not the gospel, but that is also a part of the mission of what the gospel is sent to do. But that's not the gospel. The gospel is to preach the gospel or good news to the poor, which we're going to deal with that in just 1 minute. Hold your horses there. All right, now. So he says to preach deliverance to the captives, recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty to them that are bruised, and to preach the acceptable year of Yah. So now, what the Messiah read, we're going to go to the book of Isaiah, and we're going to read where this scroll reads just a little different than what we read in. There's a few words of difference that we see, but it's the same scroll. So we have to understand, after reading Luke 4:18, that the translators changed some things. Now we go to Isaiah 61 and look and see what was there in the English there. And now we have an understanding of what we're going to have an understanding of what the gospel is, to get another definition. And then we're going to see what the gospel really is, right? Okay, now here we go. All right. Isaiah 61 verse 1. The spirit, or the Ruwach of Yah is upon me, because Yah have anointed me to do what? To preach good tidings. See that? Now in the New Testament it said the gospel. So the gospel is the Hebrew word good tidings, or the English phrase I should say good tidings, which is from the Hebrew word 1319. So the good tidings is found here in the Hebrew, the word 1319, basar, which means to be fresh, full, cheerful, to announce glad news. So glad news, good tidings is the gospel. Good tidings, glad tidings, right, is what the Messiah taught to, watch what he said, good tidings to the meek. See, now in the New Testament it said to preach the gospel to the poor. And the gospel to the poor is not, you don't have to be broke no more. Because we've taken the gospel to the poor and we've taught, now we have what's called a prosperity. Everybody's got the money syndrome. And that is not the gospel. The gospel to the poor is not, you don't have to be broke no more. The gospel to the poor is not, you're rich now, right? Because the gospel to the poor is the meek. Good news to a person that's not, the opposite of meek is pride, right? So the gospel, or the good news or glad tidings unto the meek, he said. He sent him to preach the good tidings to, not the uplifted, but to the meek, right? Which means that now we're going to have to go into a whole nother segment of this teaching dealing with the high-minded and the prideful versus the lowly and the meek, right? All right. So the gospel, or the glad tidings, is preached to those who are meek. All right. Now, I think you understand where I'm going, but before I get there, let me do this here, because I got to do this here. All right. Let's go to Isaiah 40 and 19. All right. Isaiah chapter 40, 19. All right. Isaiah 40 and 19. I'm pretty sure you probably already know what the gospel is now. Okay, chapter 40, verse 9. All right. O Zion, that bringeth good tidings. Okay. Now, Zion, he's saying, brings good tidings, or the gospel. Zion, who is Zion? Those who are called, anointed, and chosen of Yah to do what? To do everything that he said to do. To live not by bread alone, not by the material things, but to live by every word that proceeds out of his mouth. Because when you live by his word, whatever you need comes, because why? He is the provider of it all. Right? Now, so he says here in Isaiah 40 verse 9, O Zion that bring good tidings, get thee up unto the high mountain, O Jerusalem. Now he breaks it down. That bringeth good tidings, you see. Lift up thy voice with strength, lift it up. Be not afraid. Say unto the cities of Yehuda, behold your Elohim. Behold, Yah Elohim will come with strong hand. Watch this now. And his arm shall rule for him. Behold, and his arm shall rule for him. Behold, his reward is with him, and his work before him. He shall feed his flock like a shepherd. He shall gather the lambs with his arm, and carry them in his bosom, and shall gently lead those that are with the young. Look at the next verse here, right? Why sayest thou, O Jacob, and speaketh, O Israel, my way is hid from Yah, and my judgment is passed over from my Elohim. Hast thou not known, hast thou not heard, that the everlasting Elohim, the Yah, the creator of the ends of earth, fainteth not, neither is weary? There is no searching of his understanding. He giveth power to the faint, not the prideful. He giveth power to the faint, and to them that have no might. He increaseth strength, brothers and sisters. Okay. Even the youth shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fall. But they that wait upon Yah shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. So the Most High is showing you that he's resisting the proud and giving grace unto what? The humble and the meek. Right? So the gospel to the poor, I'm not going to give it to you just yet, but I'm sure you can see the tone is not the poor don't have to be poor no more. Because there is a good news to a meek. A person that is poor in substance doesn't necessarily mean that they are poor in spirit, or that they are poor in spirit. There are some prideful poor people, right? So good news to the meek is what he's talking about. You can have money and be meek, or you could be poor and be meek. It doesn't matter what your substance is. It is an attitude that the gospel is a message to those who are what? Poor in spirit or meek, and not prideful. All right. Now let's go to Isaiah 52. All right. Isaiah 52. Hallelujah. And let's start at verse 2. Okay. Awake, awake, put on your strength, O Zion. Put on your beautiful garments, O Jerusalem, the holy city, for henceforth there shall be no more come unto thee the uncircumcised and the unclean. Oh, so he's talking about people who are righteous, you see. See, the false gospel, anybody can follow that. You don't have to be righteous. You don't have to be what? Clean. You don't have to be what? Have a circumcised heart. But watch what he says here. Henceforth there shall no more come unto you the uncircumcised and the unclean. You see, this gospel that people preach today, anybody can be a part of that. But this gospel that the Most High said that he preached to all the world, you got to come clean, brothers and sisters. You got to walk in obedience to what the Father say. This is not a religious thing. Okay, this is a requirement to be a part of what? The gospel, to be a beneficiary of the promise that was made, the gospel to the meek. All right, now let's continue. Okay, so he says, verse 2, Isaiah, Yeshayahu chapter 52 verse 2. Shake thyself from the dust. Arise and sit down, O Jerusalem. Loose thyself from the bands of thy neck, O captive daughter of Zion. So he says, shake yourself, right? Shake it fast. Shake yourself from the dust. Arise and sit down. Shake yourself from this old captivity mentality that the world has given you a false representation of what the gospel is. And now you understand that he's saying, come meek and humble, brothers and sisters. Oh, that's what he's saying then. Okay, let's continue. I'm getting excited. All right. For thus says Yah, you have sold yourselves for nothing, and you shall be redeemed without money. Because what you sold yourself for wasn't worth nothing. There's a saying that goes, I don't know if it's a scripture or not, but it says, what shall a man gain? I think it is scripture. What shall a man gain? What shall a man benefit if he gain the whole world and lose his soul? Right? So all this prosperity and having the house on the hill, which is a wonderful thing to have a multi-million-dollar home and have a private jet and all of those things that are nice to have. But what is the profit to have all that and lose your soul? Because you missed the whole intent of what the gospel is, right? Your whole thing is that you got this money coming to me now, thinking that's the gospel, when that's a perversion of the truth, right? It's a twisted doctrine, right? Now, let's get back. So he says, verse 4, for thus says Yah Elohim, my people went down aforetime into Egypt to sojourn there, and the Assyrian oppressed them without a cause, right? Verse 5, now therefore what have I here, says Yah, that my people is taken away for nothing. They that rule over them make them to howl, says Yah Elohim, and my name is continually every day is blasphemed. Verse 6, that's another lesson. I can go into that right there. Verse 6, therefore my people shall know my name. Therefore they shall know in that day that I am he that does speak. Behold, it is I. Verse 7, how beautiful upon the mountain are the feet of him that bringeth good tidings, that publish peace, that bringeth good tidings of good, that publish salvation, that says unto Zion, thy Elohim reigneth. Not you. You ain't the one that's reigning. He's the one. Humble yourself, brothers and sisters. That's what it means to be poor in spirit, to humble yourself. Get off of this pride, braggadocious mentality and humble yourself. I think it says in the Priest KhazaqYah, humble yourselves and he will exalt you in due time. All right. Now, he resists the pride, brothers and sisters. Verse 8. The watchmen shall lift up the voice, with the voice together shall they sing, for they shall see eye to eye when Yah shall bring again Zion. See that? That's good news to the meek. The Father is saying to the people that he chose, you've got to be humbled. Your uncircumcised heart's got to be humbled. And the good news to you is what? You're going to inherit that in which I already gave to you from the beginning. But you got to come the humble way. You got to come the meek way. You got to come the poor in spirit way. We're going to show you what the Messiah said when he was preaching the gospel. Okay, now, all right. Verse 9. Break forth and to joy, sing together, you waste places of Jerusalem, for Yah hath comforted his people. He hath redeemed Jerusalem. For Yah hath made bare his holy arm in the eyes of all nations. And all the ends of the earth shall see the salvation of Yah. Depart ye, go out from there. Touch no unclean thing. Go you out of the midst of her. Be ye clean, he's saying. Don't be a part of this system. Don't be like the world and say, oh, we're preaching the gospel because look at what we're doing. We a prosperity church, man. Everybody's driving a fat car. Everybody living in a fat house, right? He says, look, he says, be clean that bear the vessels of Yah. For you shall not go out with haste, nor go by fight, or flight rather. For Yah will go before you, and the Elohim of Israel will be your reward. Okay? Behold, watch what he says at verse 13. Behold, my servant shall deal prudently. He shall be exalted and extolled and be high. Who is high? His servant. As many were astonished at thee, his visage was so marred more than any man. See what the Messiah did? He didn't come here trying to have an entourage and people make merchandise out of the life ministry of the Messiah, or the Messiah was rich. He had his, see, you know, you missing the whole concept. You missing the whole precept, because you got a concept is what you got. Okay. So shall the sprinkling many nations, the kings shall shut their mouths at him. For that which had not been told them shall they see, and that which they had not heard shall they consider. So here we see the gospel being preached right here. Okay, the Messiah is the gospel himself, because he is a living example of the message that he said today. You have seen this preached in your eyes, before your ears, right? This gospel has been preached. I am the gospel, right? And I'm showing you my lifestyle is an example or a reflection of what the gospel really is. Okay. So I know you're wondering, you say, well, brother, when are you going to just spill it out? Because I'm kind of slow. I want you to spill it out. We're going to get there in a second. Okay. Now let's go to Nahum. Let's start at verse 12. Thus says Yah, though they be quiet, and likewise many, yet thus shall they be cut down, when he shall pass through. Though I have afflicted thee, I will afflict thee no more. So he made a promise to, this is the gospel, he made a promise. I will afflict thee no more, for will I break his yoke from off of thee, right? And I will burst thy bonds in sunder. So here is the gospel being preached again, telling you what the gospel is, right? He said that he afflicted you. I'm going to take his bonds off. I'm going to take his yoke off of you. Verse 14, and Yah hath given a commandment concerning you, that no more of the name be sown out of the house of the mighty ones. The mighty ones will I cut off, he says. The graven and the molten image. I will make thy grave, for thou art vile. See? Now, so what is he doing? What is he showing you? He's trying to break us down, brothers and sisters. That's the gospel, breaking you down from who you are, from your prideful ways, from your fleshly living, from walking in the flesh. That's the gospel. He's breaking us down from that. And he's trying to turn our hearts to walk in the Spirit, because walking in the Spirit is part of the gospel. The gospel is breaking down the pride and arrogant, materialistic person to submit themselves to the Almighty, that he would do what? Exalt you. We're not doing it for the purpose of getting the wealth, but it is a law that has been already established. Verse 15, behold, upon the mountains, the feet of him that bringeth good tidings. There goes that word good tidings, which is the gospel. So let's read it the way it would read in the New Testament. Behold, upon the mountains, the feet of him that brings the gospel. See that? So the gospel, he didn't say he came to preach the good news, the gospel to the rich, to the prideful, the arrogant, the braggadocious, the boastful. But he said, I come to preach good news to the meek, the humble. All right. He says that publisheth peace, O Yehuda. Keep thy solemn feast. He didn't say break them. He said keep them. Keep thy solemn feast. Perform thy vows. For the wicked shall no more pass through thee. He is utterly cut off. So that's a promise he made. So he's saying, don't break my commandments. Keep them. Don't break my solemn feasts. Keep them. Don't break my what? Vows. Your vows that you made. Keep the vows. You see. Here's another time we find where the gospel or glad tidings, because now we understand it to mean not just gospel, but glad tidings or good news. So here we find in Luke chapter 1, verse 19. All right. And the angel answering said unto him, I am Gabriel, that standeth in the presence of Elohim, and am sent to speak unto thee and to show thee glad tidings. And behold, he says, thou shalt be dumb and not able to speak until the day that these things shall be performed, because thou believe not my words, which shall be fulfilled in their season. So now, what do we see here if we read the whole chapter? I want to go through the whole chapter. We see the father breaking down the father of Yachanan, who in this particular chapter is Zechariah, or the King James translators just muffed up his name and call him Zacharias or Zacharias, but it's Zechariah. Okay, now let's go to Philippians chapter 2. We're going to start at verse 1, and we're going to show you the gospel in action. The Messiah, who is the gospel, lived as an example of what the gospel is. And yes, his life is the gospel, but there is something that he did and taught, which is what he lived, brothers and sisters. All right, now, Philippians chapter 2, verse 1. He says, if ye therefore be any consolation in the Messiah, if any comfort of love, if any fellowship of the Spirit, if any bowels and mercies, fulfill ye my joy, that ye be like-minded, having the same love, being of one accord, of one mind. Whew. Shaul now is breaking down this gospel right here. He breaking it down, brothers and sisters, because Shaul lived the gospel. He understood what the gospel was. His life was an example of the gospel, because he said, I'm going to be a follower of the Messiah. He showed me what the gospel is, how it is to live of the gospel. My goodness. How it is to live off that good news, that glad tidings. Okay, now, he says, let nothing be done through strife and vainglory. He's breaking that pride down, right? But in lowliness of mind, look at what Shaul was saying here. In lowliness of mind, not in pride, braggadocious, arrogant boastfulness, but in lowliness of mind. Go ahead. And let each esteem the other better than themselves. See? That's an attitude of a meek person. When you understand the gospel, you take on the attitude of the meek, not the attitude of the prideful. Right? Verse 5, let this mind, see that? Be in you, which was also in the Messiah Yeshua. What mind? What he read, what he just said from the previous verse. Look not on your own things, but every man may also on the things of the other man. Father, help us today. Help me today. We've got to break that pride, brothers and sisters, that the Father, when you wonder why, when things start happening to you and things is getting taken from you and you can't stay married and all of that, the Father is doing what? He's teaching you what the gospel really is. He's showing you how to live the gospel. Because we got too much pride. Oh, my life is on point. I got a 6-figure income. I drive a Mercedes and Jaguar or whatever car you got. You know, I buy the latest designers. I stay at $1,000, $2,000 a night hotels when I go out on vacation. I live in the ritzy hotel, or I live in the high rent district, or I live in the fat house on the hill. That's not the gospel. That's man. That is the syndrome of Nebuchadnezzar. Is this great Babylon that I have built? My, look what I built with my hands. Man, my hands are so great. Look at what I have built with my hands. Wow. That is not, brothers and sisters, that is absolutely not the attitude of the gospel. That is the prideful, right? All right. Now, verse 6 rather. Who being in the form of Elohim, we talk about the Messiah. He said, let this mind that was in the Messiah be in you. Watch what he says now. Who being in the form of Elohim, thought it not robbery to be equal with Elohim, but 7. Watch what he says here. This is the gospel right here, brothers and sisters. This is what you get. But made himself of no reputation, and took upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men. And being found in the fashion as a man, so he went from being the creator to being a man. Being found in the fashion of a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. See that? So the gospel is what? Dying, not living. He that seeketh to save his life, that's what the Messiah was teaching when he walked the face of the earth. He that seeketh to save his life shall lose it. Because what the gospel is saying, you ought to seek death. In that particular form. He that seeketh to save his life shall lose it. But he that seeketh to lose his life for my name's sake, right, shall gain his life. You see. Let's continue now. Verse 9. Wherefore Elohim also hath highly exalted him and given him a name which is above every name. Why? Because he humbled himself. That's why the name Yahshua is important. See, the Father didn't give him the name Jesus. Man gave him that name because man want to control the creation, or the creator, I should say, and make the creator the creation. The Father said, I gave him a name that is above every name. And that name is Yahshua. Yeah, brother, but I've been called on Jesus all my life. Man gave you that name. Well, I cast out devils in that name. That's what the Messiah said. Many gonna come in that day and say, I've cast out devils in your name. You can say, I'm gonna say to you, depart from me, I never knew you. Number one, you had the wrong name. Number two, yeah, you did cast out devils in that name, whoever name that was. But yet still I don't know you. 1 Peter chapter 5 verse 1, and it reads, the elders which are among you I exhort, who am an elder and a witness of the sufferings of the Messiah. See, nobody wants to suffer. Everybody no, suffer, right? And that's a whole lesson itself, just dealing with suffering, right? And also a partaker of the glory that shall be revealed. See that? But you can't partake in the glory if you don't partake in the suffering. Okay? Feed the flock of Elohim, which is among you. Take the oversight thereof, not by constraint, but willingly, not for filthy lucre, but of a ready mind. You ought not to have a gimmick how to get people to come into this truth. Neither as being masters over Elohim's heritage, but being examples to the flock. So this lavish lifestyle, they were saying that if you want to walk in the covenant, you got to look like me. So if you want to have the wealth and be walking in the covenant, you got to give me of your money. You got to sow a seed to me. The less is blessed by the better. So you want a prosperous business, you got to sow money into my prosperous business, and then you're going to prosper. That's a false teaching. That is not the gospel. That's filthy lucre is what he's just saying. Filthy lucre's sake, right? All right, now. He says, and when the chief shepherd shall appear, you shall receive a crown of glory that fadeth not away. So when are you going to receive that crown of glory? When the chief shepherd appears. See, everybody I want my stuff, and I want it now. You know, I want my stuff. Tell the devil I want my stuff. I want my stuff now. Tell the devil I want my stuff. I want it now. Right? And people get all emotional. Oh, yeah, who? But see, that ain't the gospel. We just read right here, Shimon Kepha said that when the chief shepherd shall appear, you're going to receive your crown of glory then. He said, and it won't fade away. Verse 6, likewise, you hunger, submit yourself to the elder. Man, we don't see that happening nowadays. Yeah, all of you be subject one to another, and be clothed with humility, he's saying here. See, this is the gospel. Be clothed with humility. For Elohim resists the proud and giveth grace to the humble. Verse 6, he says, humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of Elohim, that he may exalt you in due time. Humble yourself. That's the gospel. I'm going to go somewhere. Let me go to Leviticus chapter 26. I got to read this, and then we're going to close out, okay? Let's go to Leviticus chapter 26. All right. Now, this is what the Most High promised to the nation of Israel. This is the gospel. All right. Now, Leviticus chapter 26 and verse 40. Okay. This is the gospel that shall be preached to all the world, and the end shall come. You want to know why we have all the crime going on, why we have all the poverty going on, why we have the lawlessness going on and all of that? Because we don't understand the gospel. And our media and our marketing and our merchants are basically in total opposition to the gospel. Right? James says something, from whence come wars and fightings from among you? Come they not from your lust, right? That war in your members? That's where the wars and fightings come from, because we don't understand the gospel, and we thinking that, oh, prosperity, that's the covenant. If you poor, you're not in the covenant, when in actuality, it has nothing to do with your wealth state. It has to do with your heart state. You see. All right, now, verse 40. Leviticus chapter 26, verse 40. If they shall confess their iniquities, he says, and the iniquities of their fathers, with their trespasses, which they have trespassed against me, he said, and that also have walked contrary unto me, he said, and that I have walked contrary unto them into the land, he says, have walked contrary unto them and have brought them into the land of their enemies. If then their uncircumcised hearts be what? Humbled, right? And then they accept the punishment of their iniquities. Then, see that? If their uncircumcised hearts be humbled. That's what the Most High is saying. That's what the gospel is. Humble yourselves, right? He says, if your uncircumcised hearts be humbled, and you accept the punishment of your iniquity, so it is iniquity that causes us to be punished. Then I will remember my covenant with Jacob, and also my covenant with Isaac, and also my covenant with Isaac, and my covenant with Abraham will I remember, and I will remember the land. Right? If my people, 2 Chronicles chapter 7 verse 14, who were called by my name would humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways. That's works. But you've been taught you don't have to work. I'm saved by grace through faith, that not of works. Right? We're going to deal with that too in another lesson. But let's stick here. All right, now. So that's what the Most High said. Now let's go to Matthew chapter 5, right? All right, Matthew chapter 5. We're going to call it tonight. This is the gospel in a nutshell, what the Messiah taught the multitudes. And this is when they all went away. He said, this is the gospel. So when you start preaching the real gospel, people start leaving because they ain't trying to hear that, because that's not the gospel to them. I don't know what you preaching, brother, but that's not the gospel, brother. I want the gospel. I ain't the gospel, brother. That's something, I don't know what you preaching, brother, but I want the gospel, right? Okay, now, Matthew 5, verse 1. And seeing the multitudes, here the Messiah, see, he had a mega congregation that was following him at this point, right? He had blew up so big, right? Because people follow him for the signs and let me ask you a question. Are you following the Most High for the signs, for the fishes and the loaves? Are you following him because, oh, my ministry, my pastor, my bishop, my apostle, whatever, is rich and wealthy? He teaches us how to be business people. He teaches us how to have money, how to obtain wealth. Are you in this because of that? Or are you in it because, see, you can have it now and lose it all in eternity. Why? Because you don't have the gospel. If you can have it now, have part of it now, and live in the gospel, and then have it for eternity, that's a wonderful thing. But everybody can't do that, because once they get things, the Messiah said, how hard is it for a person that got riches to enter to the kingdom? Because it's hard to be humble when you have things. You become prideful, braggadocious, and arrogant, right? Now, let me get back here so I can close out. So Matthew 5, when the Messiah saw the multitudes, he went up to the mountain. Notice he had to go up to the mountain, get away from the people, because he's what he about to say to the people, they about to go in an uproar, right? Well, he went up to the mountain, and when he was set, his disciples came unto him, and he opened his mouth, and he taught them, saying, this is what he taught disciples. You want to know what the gospel is? Here it is right here, right? He said, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Poor in spirit. Not braggadocious and prideful and arrogant. Remember the 70 when they went to cast out the devils, and they came back with all of this great excitement. Oh, master, boy, we slapping 5, man. Man, we cast some devils. Then we cast some devils out today. And the Messiah looked at him like, y'all still don't know the gospel, do you? He said, you rejoicing because the devils are subject to you. He said, but you better rejoice that your name is written on high. Because the reward that I promise right here is yours, but it's given to those who fit this criteria, right? Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Okay, now we're not talking about somebody who's mourning because they lost a loved one. We're talking about those who know what their worth is and know that what does it profit you to gain the whole world, lose your soul? Why would you give up your righteous standing to gain a status that you're going to lose. Because he said here, blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Why? Because you're poor in spirit. Verse 5, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit. Now, the popular teaching is that when you die, if you want to die and go to heaven, the Messiah didn't teach that. What amazes me is that the educated, I'll give them their proper recognition. The educated scholars who have so much knowledge of they can break down the translations and how the Bible was in the history and all of that, but yet they got everybody going to heaven when they die. When there's not one single verse in this book that tells you when you die you're going to heaven. Not one single verse that tells you when you die you're going to heaven. But yet these so-called doctors of divinity, great biblical scholars who write big books and have big TV ministries and big cassettes and DVDs and the whole 9 yards, but they got you going to heaven when you die. And there's not one place in this book where you die and go to heaven. Not one place. But here, the Messiah said, the meek shall inherit the earth. So the same earth that you working so hard for, going away to college, which I'm not against that, to get you a master's and bachelor's degree and doctor's degree so you can get a 6-figure income and live in a high residential community to have status. Here, the gospel says, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. So why are you so conscious on going to heaven when the Most High said that you're going to inherit the earth if you are meek? All right, let's continue. He said, blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. That's the gospel. You hunger and thirst after righteousness. So we have to define, without going through a whole exegetic and a whole nother lesson, in a nutshell, righteousness is being right, doing that which is right as defined by the one who created us. His word, his law, his code of ethics, his instruction is life. David said, he said, the law of Yah is perfect, converting the soul. So if the law is perfect, why are you so desirous and so dogmatic about saying the law is no more? Okay, we're going to get to that in the same chapter. All right, now. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Well, brother, you don't know what he did to me. You don't know what she did to me. You don't know what they did to me. I don't think I could ever forgive them for that. But I'm saved now. But I don't know if I could ever forgive them for that. He said, blessed is the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. This is the gospel now. All right. Verse 8. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see Elohim. The pure in heart are the ones that's going to see Elohim, brothers and sisters. The pure in heart. Okay? Not the corrupt that's making excuses. Well, we're saved by grace, brother. Okay? Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of Elohim. He didn't say, blessed are the hell raisers. Blessed are the Jerry Springer people. Verse 10. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So when you are persecuted because you are being righteous in right standing, trying to follow and obey and not use the we're not under the law, brother. We saved by grace through faith. We don't have to keep that law. It's too cruel. He said, when you are a person, brother and sister, that you are persecuted for obeying the Father, while the world is out getting ready for this Hellenistic season of Xmas and, working overtime on the Shabbat, not because they need it, but they're working overtime on Saturday. For those of you that don't understand when the Shabbat is, the seventh day, because I'm trying to save up all this money so I can buy my kids some toys for Christmas. Verse 11, blessed are you when men shall revile you and persecute you and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my name's sake. See that? So the false accusation is because of his name's sake. When you are teaching people that you're supposed to obey the commandments, well, he ain't keeping all the commandments. He did this, he did that. Well, we're not talking about a person dotting every I and crossing every T. We're talking about the attitude regarding the word of the Most High. He says we are to obey, even when we fall short. When I fall short of the glory of Yah, man, I get on my knees and I say, Father, I know I'm supposed to be obeying your word. Give me strength, give me mercy, give me grace to clean my act up. There's a song that says, clean up what I done messed up, right? Help me to clean it up, because we all have sinned and come short of the glory of Yah, but our attitude about sin has to change. Oh, brother, nobody's perfect. That's the wrong attitude. We're going to show you in a minute in the same chapter what the Messiah said, right? Okay, now let's continue. He says, verse 12, rejoice and be exceeding glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. See that? The prophets did what? The prophets was beheaded and killed. Many of them were burned alive because why? They was telling Israel, return, you backslider. Serve the Creator. Obey his law. Obey his commandments. Obey his statutes. Don't fall prey to the society that tell you you don't have to obey. That's too religious, brother. That's too. The Most High gave us the antidote for life and eternal life. Remember, they came to the Messiah and said, what must I do, good master, reverend, to obtain eternal life? Trying to trick him. He said, keep the commandments. He didn't say break them. He said keep them, right? All right. Verse 13. Let's skip down to, okay, let's just read it out. Okay. Verse 13, you are the salt of the earth, but the salt that have lost its savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is thenceforth good for nothing but to be cast out and to be trodden under the foot. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all that are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works. Oh, we're not saying about works, brother. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works. We're not saying about works, brother. That's your interpretation. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Brother, in the flesh is dwelleth no good thing. Okay. You want to be smart, right? So if we're not saved by works, why go to church? Why pay tithes? Why get married? Why do anything? Just live what you want to, the way you want to live, because we're not saved by work. All we got to do, I believe, brother. I believe. I just got to believe, brother. The finished works of Christ. That's the next lesson we're going to do. All I have to do is have faith in the finished works of Christ. I don't have to live by that law. It's too cruel. The finished works of Christ. Is that what the Messiah is teaching right here? He's saying just have faith in me. You don't, because immediately after this, after he taught this lesson, his whole congregation, his multitude scattered. They were like, this is too much for us, brother. We ain't trying to hear that. All right, let's get back. Here's the punchline. I'm going to read these next few verses and then we're going to close out. Verse 17, think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. You see that? The Messiah said, I come to fulfill the law and the prophets, right? He said, for verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall not pass until all be fulfilled. Whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments and shall teach men so, he shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say unto you that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees, you shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven. That is the gospel. And on that note, I'm going to close. I'm going to say, I pray you had a blessed Shabbat. Those of you who are viewing this, we pray that the Most High blessings upon you and your family. Until the next time. Shalom, shalom, shalom.